Yeah, good morning, Mr. Aromose. To introduce you to our speakers, this is MA recording and podcast, and we are geared towards political education and understanding of the role of capitalism in our society and all that. So I'm with Mr. Segun Aromose, a finance expert based in Bayelsa, and he's going to educate us about the nature of capitalist maneuvers by the ruling class in our society and how government policies, essentially is controlled by this capitalist class. So, Mr. Aromose, you're welcome to MA podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on the podcast, and I look forward to a very enlightening conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As an expert in this field of finance or economics, can you just give us some reasons for the Nigerian economy always floundering, entering recessions, all this big grammar? Can you just explain to us why we have this problem?
Right. The issue of Nigeria, everyone has sort of become an expert on diagnosing Nigeria's economic problem, and it is so because our problems are pretty basic. So everyone, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, pontificates on what the problem is, and they try to give solutions. And from the conversations that we see around, in terms of that's the general conversation on what the Nigerian problem is. It's pretty obvious, which is a lot of it centers around bad government policies, bad government economic policy. So it's a very broad statement, but it's true. Maybe, and as we go further in this discussion, we'll peel the layers of that statement of bad economic policies. So the most obvious, of this bad economic policy is the inability for Nigeria as a country to be able, to diversify its reliance on oil income. So essentially we have an economy where we sell only one thing to the world, which is crude oil. Not even processed oil, just crude raw oil that's just dug from the ground and then sold. I'm not sure there's any economy in the world that can survive, such a situation. So it's not just enough that, we are selling just one thing to the world. Is that we don't add any value to it. We are selling it as it's been dug, from under the ground. Then secondly, the little resources that's been got from the sale of crude oil is now mismanaged by the federal government. So again, like I said, there's layers to it, but I guess that's a starting point.
Thank you very much. From our own perspective as socialist leaning organization, we are educated that we have a ruling class that essentially hijacks the state, and then whether the mode of production or how we produce is efficient or inefficient, because you mentioned crude oil being good and not refining, as long as they are there collecting the revenue from this thing, is explained to us that it is logical for that to go on because this our ruling class. They are just there to sell. They are just there to sell and make their own profit. So they are not there to improve the production or make things better or produce more efficiently. So with the understanding, I don't know if you agree with the fact that we have a ruling class that has essentially hijacked the Nigerian state and they are using it to profiteer for themselves. I don't know if you agree with that. Do you agree with that?
No, clearly, I think if you've lived in Nigeria long enough, you will know that the Nigerian social space, is divided into two. So you have the people who keep complaining every day about Nigeria being bad, things not working for them and such. And then you have another class that are completely quiet on the issue. You never hear them complain because Nigeria works for them. As a matter of fact,
Mm.
the day Nigeria starts to work for all Nigerians is the day you are taking food away from these people. So clearly there's a class divide in the country. That is not even, that's not up for debate.
Mm. Mm. So we're saying that now, if we have a class that is essentially controlling what we call the government or the state, or the federal government, then does this now translate into these bad economic policies that we have? Because if it doesn't work, if it works for them, then it means it doesn't work for the masses. So might these bad economic policies be working for them? And if it's bad for us, but is it good for them?
Mm. Well, again, like we already, mentioned before, Nigeria works for this, what do we call them now? The bourgeoisie class
Mm.
of the country. Nigeria actually does work for them. So the masses can keep crying from now until the world ends. These people don't care. For all of the way you see, the decently educated Nigerians migrating out of the country to look for opportunities in Western countries and things like that. You never hear that the children of some people are leaving the country to go and live in Canada or to go and live in the UK. No. They're in the same Lagos, they're in Abuja, they're in Port Harcourt. So Nigeria is working for them well and their children and their family. So their children school abroad and come back to Nigeria. Poor man's children are looking for ways every day to leave the country to look for economic opportunities because all opportunities in Nigeria are now being given to the children of the rich. That's
Essentially
just what it
monopolize
is.
it.
Yes. So growing up back then, we used to, the profession for the rich man's children back in the day was accounting, engineering, just academically, driven endeavors, right? So, and then all the artisanal work or artistic or creative work was left to poor people's children. But these days, you now find out that rich people's children are becoming fashion designers. They are becoming musicians. They are doing things that used to be relegated to the poor people's children. Essentially, there's no opportunities at all.
Mm. If I would even come in there, we will see that because these people's children and their parents have access to so much resources, this so-called artisanal work now has just become a means of leisure to their children. I will say so. Can we say that they are not doing it out of necessity? Are they doing it out of necessity, or they are just doing it as as leisurely stuff, fashion design and all that, event planning, baking, because there's a difference between what the artisan does and the need for doing it, and then how the children of the bourgeoisie do it, because we are seeing it from the angle of once you monopolize the resources, then you now have time for leisurely activity. Well, what do you think about that?
I mean, you are definitely correct, and I agree with that sentiment. So there's a term called trust fund babies. So trust fund means that you have like some sort of family estate or a trust fund in the name of your child. So you have a lot of these children who, at the point when they were born, they already have trust funds set up in their names, worth millions of dollars. So they can actually live their lives, just pursuing their passions, pursuing, things that, that just appeals to, appeals to them. not because, their daily bread hinges on it, but for them, it's leisure. But then what they do is, they keep raising the bar higher and higher, because for anyone to break into these fields, you would require more and more resources. It used to be a whole lot easier growing up to make it as an artist, because all you needed was, oh look, you are decent enough singer or music writer, you record your song, you take it to the radio stations and things like that. But these days, no matter how good your song is, you take it to the radio station, you still require a lot of money,
Capital,
yeah, just to gain, some level of acceptance, so it's very, very difficult for the common man there. It's very difficult. Not to say the opportunities are completely gone, but it just gets, a lot harder and harder, and that's what we are talking about. The fact that, you wake up in the morning and then, there's just a certain feeling of hopelessness that sets in. And look, how do I, make way in my chosen field or chosen career?
So we're saying essentially the rule of money, the rule of capital has dominated all spheres of life, and then the common man cannot even have access to what he used to be able to do before.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. From the look of things now, and diving deeper into our economy now, we hear this policy, that policy, and then we have to now look at the ways by which the ruling class use the Nigerian fiscal policy, monetary policy, exchange rate policy. How can you break these things down for how they use it to enrich themselves? If you can take it one after the other for us, so can you just break it down?
Okay. When it comes to government policies, so the idea is that there are two major forms of economic policy. There's a fiscal policy and there's a monetary policy. The monetary policy is driven largely by the central bank. And then the central bank has the sole mandate to try to manage aggregate price of goods in the economy, which is inflation. And they do this largely by using two major tools available to them. One is interest rates, and then the other is exchange rates. So how can they influence, the supply of money using interest rates? So if, for example, the central bank feels that the economy is growing very slowly and they need to boost economic activities in the market, in the economy. So what they will typically do, for example, is to reduce interest rates. The reduction of interest rates will make money cheap. Of course, this is theoretical, so.
Go ahead. The idea is to make money cheap.
Yeah, so the idea is to make money cheap, and so which then spurs economic activities. So an example would be I walked into a bank, interest rates are low, so a business can easily go into a bank, borrow at cheap interest rates to keep activities going. And so imagine this, the multiplier effect that this what it has across the economy. So, and then the converse is also true. In a situation where they feel the economy is overheated and then they are trying to manage the rate at which prices are increasing. So what they do is they increase interest rates, so this sort of mops up a lot of cash, in the economy, with the issue of government securities. So that is how interest rates is used to to manage inflation in the economy. Well, of course, like I said, this can end up being a theoretical concept. Why? Because in Nigeria, it is very, very difficult, even for uh, small-sized institutions, and as small and medium scale enterprise, to gain access to these loans from Nigerian banks. The Nigerian financial institution is very, very class biased toward the upper class, because they are the ones who tend to have access to loans from financial institutions. So one can try to break down the distribution of loans that are being given out in the country, and then typical thing that you would see. Of course, don't quote these numbers, because but it's just for illustrative purposes. So you can have a situation where a bank has, for example, 20,000 customers on its books. So meaning that they've given out loans to 20,000 people. By the time you break down these loans in terms of size, what you tend to find out is a lot of the loans are skewed to just a few people. So if you have a bank whose balance sheet is about let's say 1 trillion, what you tend to see is of the 1 trillion, probably 800 million has been given to some 30 people, and then you find that those same 30 people, those 30 names are the same names that you see across most of the banks. So without mentioning names, we know the usual suspects that you will see, on the books of Guarantee. You go to Zenith Bank, you go to Access Bank. They are all giving loans to exact same names, So essentially, this so-called monetary policy, that's interest rates as managed by the central bank, is skewed towards these people.
One of things like exchange rates, because we've seen that. So it means if the government is with one side of its mouth saying, go and get loans, and then the same interest rates and the access to these loans is only skewed towards the ruling class, the same elites, then it means effectively there cannot even be the chance for the common man, the poor people, to even start any business or even get access to credit facilities. Right?
Yeah. So that's correct. And the same way we have these monetary policies being geared toward just one section or class of people in the country. Same thing, you have a situation where exchange rates policy, that's foreign exchange rates policy, is killing the economy on a whole, but then is working perfectly well for just a select few in the country. So you have a situation where someone like Mr. D, we'll call him, so someone like Mr. D. So Mr. D, for example, during the height of the last recession that Nigeria had, where you have a situation where on the streets, in the parallel markets, as they say, you have a situation where dollars was selling for, north of 300 naira for a dollar. And yet you have a situation where Mr. D, has access to dollars directly from the central bank at half the rate. And that's just, one case, and that's because Mr. D is very popular on the lips of the average man. So what you find is that you tend to find that you tend to find that there's a lot of other people who have access to below market price for dollars. So essentially, Nigeria as a whole is subsidizing a class of people. So through all forms, through foreign exchange rates, through interest rates, and of course, when you hear when we talk of fiscal policy really is just the ability for the federal government to raise taxes or increase their level of borrowing. So you now have a situation where people who have access to cheap capital from the government end up using the same cheap access to capital that's being provided by the government to buy securities, that's issued by the government. So these guys, they get their money, being funded by the government, and they still end up using the same sums, to buy government treasury bills and government bonds and such and such. So generally the entire system, is is kind of like is mafia like, if I can say that.
So it means that the because in our own line of socialist thinking, we need to always remind ourselves that in some of our classic texts, it says monopoly is the logical outcome of capitalist society. And is this true in the Nigerian context? Because we've been seeing that the exchange rates, the interest rates, all these kind of things has been muscled in on by the ruling class now, as we call them. And we are seeing that the state itself is now taking on the character of being a feeder of this class. It enriches them, it gives them access to raw materials, cheap, and all that, guaranteed markets, all these things. So can we say that this ruling class has monopolized what we call the Nigerian economy now for their private accumulation of wealth?
I mean, Nigeria likes to pretend that it is that it's a free market society, and by that means that things are market driven. But then, for any system to be market driven, one of the basic tenets of a market driven economy is competition. So, in other words, you have a situation where people are left, to compete, in the economy, but then the assumption is the field is level for us to compete. But then when you now have, a situation where you find out that some people have been given 20 years, some sort of government grants on taxes, they tell them, oh, look, Mr. D is the sole importer of XYZ commodity. Let's say for example, let's say salt. And then you hear that he's the sole importer of salt into the country. Right? And and this is not just something that is because he is the only one who has the capacity to do that. No. He's been enabled by the government, that, oh, look, you are the only one we're giving this license to import salt into the country. And off of that, you end up creating a billionaire, so there's clearly no form of competition in this system, so you have a situation where one man controls the price of cement. He can increase the price and drop the price to suit his own goal, not because it is what pays the end users, which is the consumers, right? So Nigeria is the country where, even though we have there's very, very heavy deposit of limestones and things like that, things that make up cement in Nigeria, yet Nigeria is one of the countries where we pay the highest per bag of cement. Why? Because one man has monopoly, of the entire cement industry in the country. And by the time we start to break down the sectors in the country across, across board, you find out that this situation replicates itself. Each economy, which aspect of the economy is controlled by a few people. You go to banking, maybe 2 or 3 banks control the entire banking system. You go to cement manufacturing, you find out that 1 or 2 companies, are the ones controlling that system. You go to so and it just replicates itself, again and again and again and again. So it's that when you made the statement, if Nigeria is a monopoly, yes, Nigeria is a monopoly.
We have to look at another aspect, which is debt, debt and debt cancellation. Because now it's in the news that a bunch of people owe like 3 trillion to AMCON and all that. What can we say about this kind of, debt structure that throws the common man under the bus and dispossess them, but the ruling class can have access to almost what we call the national budget in terms of capital size. The debt structure of the country, is it part of the thing that is crushing the people? And again, is it a reflection of the monopolistic tendency of the nation, or is our system?
We already kind of addressed this because, first of all, which people did we say have access to getting this loan in the first place? So it's the people in the ruling class. That's one. So the same people who have access to these loans can decide to pay or not. So you have a situation where someone will easily get a loan from a bank on the basis that he's a Nigerian senator. Meanwhile, a regular Nigerian, who tries to, gain access to loans, they will tell you to go and bring documents, of your dead grandfather's land and houses. So, so how do you, when you've made it a lot easier for some people to gain access to these loans, they are not properly documented, so if they default on their loans, what recourse do you get? Because you've given out the loans on the basis of party in the first place. So when they decide not to pay, how do you properly track them down? So you can't. You really can't. So and this is what you find. So the last time I think AMCON tried to publish the names of some people who are owing them debts, because I think what AMCON tried to do was they tried to de-risk the financial system by taking the bad loans from the books of these banks, and then they now try to pursue these guys. But clearly this is a strike that hasn't worked. So you find out that when the names were printed, typical names, just typical names that you find, and then you see the same guys, one person owing like 10 banks, and we know who these people are. They are celebrated in the country. They call them moguls. They call them all sorts, But in the true fact, all they've just done is they've taken money that belonged to the general masses. They've taken it for themselves. They refuse to pay, and there's no recourse for it. You had situations where I think about like 15 years ago, you see banks just collapsing left, right, and center. You just wake up and try to go to your bank, and then the bank has been shut down. Why? They're giving out these loans to these people. They don't want to pay back, and so.
Okay.
Apologies.
Yeah. So like banks folding up and crashing, and people's monies essentially going down the drain and lives going down the drain is also a side effect of this profit-sharing ruling class. Abi, this is what we're trying to establish.
Yeah.
Yes. And then again, another thing that we as socialists look at is social order now. Because you mentioned something about these people being called mogul. They go on TEDx and tell us how to work hard. If you do this, you get this. You just don't sleep, spend 100 hours per day and all that, and then your dream becomes true. But we're seeing that these people essentially feed part of the public treasury at the expense of, the masses. Is this the right assessment?
Yes, yes.
Mm, mm. And then again, you mentioned that we had senators on that list and all that. So is this showing that the system cannot correct itself? Because when you have people in government that are essentially the main guys taking this money, or people linked to government, then I think this, disables the punishment factor. What do you think about that? Because this pursuing and that strategy of going after them, it will fail because they are part of they are the ones, the government people themselves are the ones benefiting from these loans. Am I right on that?
You know, you're absolutely correct. And I give you an example. So back in the day, federal government securities that are lodged in the banks, for example, did not used to earn any interest rates. So this is prior to treasury single accounts.
Now, if I may come in, can you educate our people about what securities mean so that they don't?
All right. So you can think of security as a term. Security is just a term for some sort of financial investments that's in your name, right? So it could either be, so there are two forms generally. So it is either equity, which is
shares,
exactly what we call shares. It shows that you have ownership or a stake in that company. Right. Now the other is fixed income or debt. Basically, you are borrowing some money, and then the person pays you interest rates over a period of time, and then they pay you back your capital. So, which is what you find. A lot of talk about. They want to buy treasury bills.
Okay.
They want to buy government bonds. They are basically borrowing the government money. So they are called debt securities.
Okay.
So also, and then the other is equities, which is ownership. Right. So as I was saying, so in this period when the government used to charge, so the idea was for all their securities that were, and for all their money that's sitting in banks, they are not supposed to charge any interest. So you know what these banks do? This bank will lobby the government, maybe for what depending on what kind of close relationship with any government, parastatal or state government or federal government that you have. You can lean on your relationship with them to gain access to government cash, and then you still use the same money. Now, don't forget that there's a rule that government cash doesn't generate interest. So essentially, they are getting money at zero rates, and then they end up using this money to buy government securities, that's government bonds.
So the same banks use it to buy government
to
bonds.
now buy. So it is free money. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you take someone's money, they are not paying the person any interest. You now use the same money to loan back to the government. Yes, at some interest.
And this is going on full speed in Nigeria.
Yes.
It probably explains how most of these bank executives become billionaires and very rich over time.
Yes, I mean, at a certain level within the industry, I think your job becomes more political than any other thing else.
This is another understanding that people need to come to terms with, because politics plays a very, very, crucial role in all spheres of our lives, and people must be interested in it, can see all these policies and how they come to, at the end of the day, screw up the people and transfer wealth upwards to the ruling class.
Definitely. A lot of the times, you see people who say that that they are medical doctors, they are engineers, and such and such and such. One thing that we must recognize is in any civil society, politics supersedes economics. Once your politics is not right, whatever you think you are doing, whatever interest you think you have, you are joking, because it is in a country where the politics is right. That's when you can be a doctor in peace. That's when you can be a researcher in peace. That's when you can do whatever it is you want to do in peace. Once the politics is not right, every other thing will just be a matter of chance and luck. There will be no systematic way of climbing up the social ladder. There will be no systematic way of, economic liberation. Everything will be hinged on luck.
And while we watch the ruling class make their own money and the lives of the people sink into misery.
Exactly.
Essentially. And this is what Nigeria has been for the past 60 years now. Essentially. Because all these policies might look like the people in power are stupid. It might look as if they are naive. It might look as if they don't understand what they are doing. But as we peeled it open, we've seen that along every line, they've been using it to enrich themselves. I think that's the right assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this has ever been in doubt.
No, because there will have listeners that will come with the notion that, our government is stupid. Why can't this be? Our government, these people are stupid. But we are trying to make them see that every single thing you hear the government do is to further the interest of
stupid.
Yes.
They're not stupid. Don't look at some of the people that these guys hire. They have the best educational degree in the world. They have some of the best, trained people in their chosen field, like working with the federal government. So they went to Harvard, Yale, all sorts, London School of Economics. So if we think that these guys are just dumb and they don't know what they're doing, I think we are even making way for them until people start to hold them accountable. So that these guys know what they are doing and they are enriching themselves deliberately through specific policies.
If we hear things like, they've banned so and so imports, they've banned this thing and that, could this also be one of their ploys to monopolize the market for one of their ruling class cronies?
Unless we want to feign ignorance, we know that 9 out of 10 times this is usually the case. Where one of them who has an interest in a certain industry, before he goes into business, he will make sure that the policies around regulation for that industry is biased towards their business. Yes, so you find a situation where one person who is manufacturing cement in the country, right, now goes and then he gets the government to either ban cement importation or increase the tariffs on cement importation. Meanwhile, if importation was allowed, for example, those imported cement, for example, might be cheap enough, to compete and then force this particular local player, to either improve his process in such a way that he can compete on a cost basis, with this imported cement. But no, they would rather Nigerians pay high price for cement just because one person wants to be a millionaire. And that's how Nigeria works.
And that's how they make billionaires over here in this their system.
Yes, the Nigerian government makes billionaires.
So to kind of pack all these things together and maybe wrap it up. What advice do you have? Of course, you told people to be very, very interested in politics and all that. What kind of advice do you have for people, especially young people, maybe young adults and all that? What advice do you have for them in the climate of this, um, economic problems that's facing everyone except the ruling
I
class?
think I think one thing anyone cannot afford to do this climate is to be ignorant. You can't afford to be ignorant. So I would tell every well-meaning Nigerian who listens to this, please educate yourself on how this country is run. Educate yourself, along the line of history, line of politics, line of economics. And, it helps you understand, what your material conditions are. So you're not, no one is living in, you're not living you're not living in space. Every everyone's decision here affects the other person. So we are within very, very short gravitational distance from one another. So because of that, you can't afford not to know what Mr. A is doing, because what Mr. A is doing is affecting your life. You can't afford not to know what Sector B is doing, what billionaire XYZ is doing, because billionaire XYZ, by the time you peel into his business, you will see that he is stealing from your future. So first thing is knowing. Once you know, then you can start to have very valid and serious conversations on how we can improve this country and wrestle this country and its economic resources from the hands of this.
Thank you very much for giving us that enlightening interview. And of course, we're going to try to publicize this and put it on our platform and all that. So thank you very much for having us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Yeah. All right. Bye.
All right.
Yeah.